Hello and welcome to Modern Longevitarian, episode 83. I am Scott Stanfield, your host. I'm super excited about today's show. We're going to have the Scott Fulton. He is the instructor of longevity at University of Delaware and the founder of Longevity Advantage. We're going to talk about health span, lifespan, talk about his pillars, his story, how he got into this. And I'm super excited about this. Now, next week's shows the next 2 week shows are fully booked on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday with top shelf guests. So stay tuned to the post coming out over the weekend to talk about all the guests that we have coming out over the coming weeks, or actually just the next week. And so I just want to say thanks for all the people supporting the show over the time that we've done this. We started doing this on October 9th, and to do 83 episodes in this time frame has been my pleasure. It's been super fun and an honor to do that. And so and Scott and I talked, I think, back in the beginning of December. And so for us to put all the pieces together to get him on the show now in February, I dug deep into my notes and found all the things about his pillars and his story and those things. And so I'm super excited. So let's just jump right into it without any further ado. Let's, clicked the wrong one. 1 second. Scott Fulton, welcome to the show.
Scott, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me in today.
Oh, you're welcome. I've been following your post on LinkedIn, right? That's how we met, was LinkedIn and those things. And love what you talk about, especially with health span, because most people, that's one of the things we talked about back when we did our discovery call, is that it's such a word that is, even 9 years ago when I came up with the word, modern longevitarian, or bought the domain name, I was calling it extend your prime years out for decades. It wasn't even a word for health span, back then that I even knew of. And so how did you get interested in and transition into becoming an instructor of longevity at the University of Delaware and then founding Longevity Advantage?
Yeah, it's a really long story that started when I was really young. And it really comes from kind of observing older people when I was young. And I think what stuck with me was the town I lived in, and I had visibility of a lot of people who were really successful in business, tremendous wealth, and then they kind of hit their retirement years, and not all of them by any stretch, but the ones that I saw go off the rails and made me think, if they can't figure it out, how do the rest of us figure it out? And it just kind of stuck with me through life. And of course, that made me an observer. And my background's in engineering and science. I've been a researcher my whole career. And I've done far too many things to get into today, but it was really at a point of, I'd done some community work and research work. And I said, okay, I want to do something different. I don't really want to help the world build another chemical plant in China or Russia, which I was asked to do at the time. I went back to community. I said, where's the biggest need in community? It's really around public health. I had a lot of friends who were doctors I played hockey with for 25 years in Canada that I think left a big impression on me. But it was really about saying that there's a big need out there. As, we all know what's happening with the boomers in terms of the numbers. But it started to drive me to realize I was seeing more and more people getting in difficulties early in life. And so I started to really dig into the research and understand what's behind the trends that are going on, not simply that there's more people getting older, and discovered there's a lot of things going on that people have no clue of. And with all the noise and confusion, I kind of said, I think there's a role I can play in trying to sort out the confusion for people and really change the odds, right? I don't like to gamble. I only risk on what I think is a sure thing. And when I look at long-term health, like if there's something I don't want to have a high risk, I want to put the odds in my favor on that. And really the more work and research I did on it, the more I realized, we have far more influence over our future health than most of us have any insights into.
Yeah, it is really an interesting piece of the puzzle. when you're interviewing people like you and I both do, right? You have your own show and things like that. I end up talking to a lot of former engineers or current engineers that have moved into health. And I'm curious about what you think the advantage of, being trained as an engineer helps you look at the human body and health span and lifespan.
Yeah, I'm not the only one. And it's funny. So in my class, one of the things I developed is this, we call the longevity curve or the health span curve, right? And it's that how long are you healthy versus how long you live. And I'd been using it for a couple of years. And then I happened to be watching a YouTube one day of Dr. Peter Attia.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it, he's using my curve. Only I looked at the date on it, it preceded, I think, when I had done mine. So as I looked at who is this guy, so it turns out he's an engineer, comes out of Toronto, right. And then he went into got his medical degree, and then another doctor worked with Zach Bush. Same thing. He started doing engineering. So I think what it does is we bring a different perspective. It's clearly analytical around practical analytics as opposed to simply research and pure and applied research. I've worked in those environments, and that's important work too. It's hard to relate to you and I, but but I think what engineers are naturally good at is, okay, what do you look at as your desired endpoint, and then how do you reverse engineer something to get to where you want to go? So I use the same thing in longevity with the class. And first day is, what would you like the end state to look like? Well,
right.
The end state is death, right? There's no escaping that. And, and the more comfortable we get with that, the easier it starts to get to be to design that whole journey from today to that point, rather than kind of living in the moment. Great, but let's kind of have some goal of what we'd like the journey to look like, as opposed to a series of, was it truth or consequence, or let's make a deal. You open the door and kind of find out what's there.
Right.
That might be fun for a game show, but a little dangerous in life. So.
Right. It is, for sure. And one of the things I like about Dr. Peter, I love both Peter Attia and Zach Bush. But Peter Attia, his podcast is called The Drive, and he's a big Formula One, Ayrton Senna fan. I grew up racing go-karts. I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch all the Grand Prix before they were tape delayed or run at different times of the day before. Just barely when, like ESPN had them and stuff like that. And so, but one of the things I love that he says really is what this end result piece is. He says 100% at age 100. And you're playing this sport, how you can do that. And you only have, 10 hours a week to really try to do that. And so you've broken this down into 5 different pillars, right? So let's talk about your pillars, and then how we can play this game, which is an end result of not playing like who makes a deal and open what's down behind door number 3, right? But let's talk about your pillars.
Sure. Yeah. So the pillars really, again, they came from the research, and to say, okay, what are the common themes that you kind of put them into buckets, and I think, just as a preface to it, what's really important is these are not 5 silos, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is interdependent on one or 2 other elements in there. So that's always important. Everything we do in one area helps another. So the first one, so we created an acronym MEDIC, MEDEC, MEDIC. Okay. So the first one is mind. So their mind, environment, diet, exercise, and community. So with mind, first place to start with mind would be attitude, right? If you don't have the right attitude, nothing else matters. You're not going to move forward. And I would say in that area, one of our, there's the attitude around being humble. If I look at studying people who are successful, a common theme you will find is they're humble because they remain curious. They want to continue to learn. And I certainly see that in people who attend my classes as well. And they want to continue to educate themselves, so be a lifelong learner. And then how do you manage stress? And that sounded a little unruly, but really in recent years, we've got much better. We can actually measure stress now. Something as simple as heart rate variability. Right. And you can have it on your watch, right? Right. Simple gauges we can now, a few years ago, that was something that was really hard to assess.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I was strapping the Wahoo chest monitor, well, laying in bed, trying to figure, and do my heart rate variability to see how I slept and should I work out and those things. I don't have an Apple Watch, but I think that, and I just want to tag in here is that, and this is why on the show, I will have leadership experts on, like Captain David Marquez, retired, the Navy captain of a nuclear sub that wrote a book called Turn the Ship Around. Because I think there's definitely a correlation between leadership and longevity, right? And I think because great leaders have higher emotional intelligence, they mitigate stress, and they're maybe leading their family or leading a business or middle manager or upper management. And so I think there's definitely a correlation with that. And so all the elements you talk about can make somebody a great leader too. And so those are the reasons why I think there's a connection there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all, these are all great case studies. And I think everything I've learned is, and this is more of the research background, is it's easy to find, one example of anything you want.
Right.
Right. So I'll just use a current one, Betty White, well, what's your secret to success? Well, I think she says she likes hot dogs or something. Well, we all know that is not the secret to success, but it's a great way to get a little publication on it. But if that's what you're looking for, the answer, there it is. And good luck with it.
Right. I think that the one that I love that she said is that she actually laughs a lot. Right. Yeah. And I think that's has a lot to do with mitigating stress and being happy and joy and those type of things. So
yeah, absolutely. And don't take things, especially yourself, so seriously. And if as we come, we look at the last year of our life in 2020 and say if there's all sorts of issues with it, separate from COVID, but one of them is, I would say, we all risk taking ourselves a little too seriously. And that's kind of the source of a lot of stress. And not to say that things don't matter, I don't mean that at all, but at the same time, dwelling on things for too long is, it literally, you die from the inside out. And when you finally realize it, it's well down the path. So,
right. So number 2, environment.
Yeah. So environment is really kind of 3 areas of environment. One is your physical environment. So you need to be living in a space that will support longevity and support health. And so I'm also chair of the National Aging Place Council. So I get the insights into what is aging like in North America and really around the world. And so we see that environmental piece at home is really important. And again, a place that people can take action on really early. Boy, your health is one thing, and the environment that you live in, being proactive is so much, so helpful, and so few people take that opportunity. The other is in ecology. So we look at, there's the world around our house, when we go outside into our garden, outside into our neighborhood and our parks, into our forests, that need to get outside is basic human needs. Go stand barefoot. You posted a video this morning, right? You're going out in the snow barefoot, and it seems crazy to most people that you would do that. Right. But you did that on purpose, right?
Yeah, I did.
Right. And so why don't you tell us why you did that on purpose? Because people would have to be curious if they don't know you.
Well, let's say the first reason would be the grounding aspect of it, right? To actually physically connect with Mother Earth, because if you understand the science or watch the earthing or ground, it's called the Earthing documentary with Clint Ober, right? He's the one, but basically we live in a battery, right? High altitude is a positive charge. The planet Earth is a negative charge there's like 10,000 lightning strikes on the planet in 2 or 3 minutes, every 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, it's just like, or maybe in a day, I don't remember, it's some crazy number, 10,000 every so often. So what happens is negatively charged. So what happens is we have started in the 60s, started wearing rubber soled shoes, right? So we don't actually connect with the earth anymore. When you wore leather soled shoes, it actually, electricity would transfer through from your body through to the earth. And so I went out there for that reason, really, to kind of just get a burst of like letting my body let go of the positive charge that it has from walking on carpet or sleeping in the bed and, those type of things. So that was the first reason. The second reason is I'm a practitioner of the Wim Hof method. right? And even though I don't do a lot of where, like, you'll see a lot of, heavy duty practitioners of the Wim Hof method. They're actually soaking their feet in ice water so they can really get used to that. My hands get colder than my feet, maybe because I walk outside in the snow barefooted every once in a while. But I'm wearing shorts. I wear shorts today. I put in long pants only if I have to, really. So it's really staying, giving this a positive stimulus or hormesis effect, where you are boosting your immune system in different ways and getting your body to move in different ways and things like that. And so those are the two main reasons that I did it. I don't know if shock factor was the third one or not, if I wanted to give a third one, right? But I am, I'm part of or in a Facebook group that's about grounding, and it freaks them out when I put those type of videos in that I'm walking out there barefooted, because it just freaks people out. Because like yesterday it was 42 degrees here at Park City, right? I wore, t-shirt, shorts to go get a haircut, right? And I had a little thin jacket on. But I'm watching people wearing full ski boots. Or wearing, full boots, hats on, ears covered up, muff, all this stuff. And what people don't realize, this 42 degrees when you wake up in the morning is going to be 60. You dress for the 60. But if it's the high's 42, right, you can survive at the 42 thinking that you're going to get to 60, but it's still 42 degrees, and it's just all in our head. It's wintertime. I'm got to wear these winter clothes because it's wintertime and I'm in the mountains and I'm at 7,000 feet. And it's just mental, right? And so the big reason that I started doing the Wim Hof method was to be able to handle the cold better. But then when I realized the mindset piece of it, it was to be an example for my kids, to show them that, something's possible. And now I got pictures of my son snowblowing, wearing a t-shirt, a hat, and jeans, right? So he's not even wearing a winter coat, right? And so I've changed the mindset of our children by doing that too.
Yeah, so I'll just circle back and say, I think so I agree with everything you said. And I think where people run into the challenges, which you raised up, was it seems crazy to do something atypical. And so if I say, where do we get in trouble? We all we say we want to lead, but most of us really just want to follow. Mm-hmm. And so we follow generally where we've been marketed and told to follow. And unfortunately, that's been the learnings over a period of time. I think the ship is starting to change course a little bit finally, I think. But you've got to be independent and strong, and kind of not worry about what your neighbors think, whether you're standing out there in your bare feet for 5 minutes.
Right. Right. Well, I tell you a funny story. We're renting rooms out to a couple of young kids. We have a room over the garage, and this is like the first year I started doing it. And I'm out there in shorts, no shirt. It's probably about 20 degrees, and I'm shoveling. I'm cold. I've been out there for about an hour shoveling because our snowblower was broke and stuff like that. And one of the guys staying there in this room, he picked his parents up from the airport, and they show up. It's a Saturday. I remember this, right? And they show up in the driveway, and their parents jump out in full on gear, and I'm literally there in shorts, no shirt, right? No winter shoes on, gloves. I do have a hat on, right? But I had literally no shirt on. And the look on their eyes, they thought I was absolutely freaking nuts. And because the energy boost that I had, I was talking faster than normal. It was like, and more than normal. And then trying to explain to them what I was doing. It was like the craziest thing, right? It was so wild. But now, 5 years later, there's actually people I've met on Facebook that are in Park City that are Wim Hof instructors, right? Taking people to the Jordanelle Reservoir to go dig holes in ice and go plunging, right? That 5 years ago, I was the craziest guy on the planet. And now there's people instructing people in doing this, right? So it takes time for that.
Yeah, it does. And everything takes time. Say in the medical world, we see it's about a 20-year lag from the time that something actually gets discovered and reasonably well understood until it will ever be adopted. And so part of it, I think what I work on is, if you want to get to the front of the line in terms of knowledge, then that's the education piece. You need to be paying attention to where are the credible information sources coming from. So the last environmental piece that I put in there is really the chemical exposure. This has continued to become a bigger issue, and it's the hardest one to know, because it's all the things, in the air you breathe, in the food that you eat, primarily, no matter where you live. And so managing that and trying to mitigate that and keep it as low as you can. You will not get it to zero. It doesn't exist. It's in the rainwater that falls at this point. It's in all the water streams. But you can do lots of things to mitigate that. And so that really is a reasonable goal. And all of those things, if you're waiting for it, again, it'll be too late by the time you get to discover it, because everything we look at, particularly on the medical side, is all of the contributors to chronic disease. We all know what they are at this point. If you wait until it becomes an acute condition, then it just means that your options are going to be much fewer at that point, and you're not going to have the journey that you could have. So that's in terms of the environmental piece. And again, that I mentioned plays right into the food. So diet is one of those things. So if you can eat clean, your own garden's a great place to do it. Whether it's regenerative ag, I know you've talked about that on your show. It's certainly a part of what I am involved in as well. Organic, non-GMO. People worry about the incremental cost. I would say, if you're worried about the cost of organic versus conventional, then you should be worried about the cost of whether you can afford the medical treatment down the road, right? Because if it really is a cost decision, I'm thinking we're generally pretty short-sighted. Eat less, eat better, right? So you don't need to spend more. Just think about, say, whatever your food budget is, how am I going to get the best food for myself and my family for what I can afford? And that's it's everybody could get to that if they wanted to. So environment's the second, or diet. We talked about mind, environment, diet. Next one is exercise. We've heard this since we were kids, and that's really essentially around the two elements there I look at are what's the frequency and then some intensity built into that. I've got a background in endurance sports. I've done Ironman triathlon, so don't get me started on exercise. Other than, obviously, I believe it's important and core to life, but at the same time, it's got to be in the context of the other four pillars. I grew up in the era of you can exercise your way out of any bad diet. I'm sorry, that is no longer an excuse in this world. You want to get together for a beer after a run or whatever, go for it. But at the end of the day, you still want to make sure you're taking care of your diet year round and every day. And then the last one is community, and community has both an emotional piece in terms of the love and support, in terms of emotional support. So we talk about tribes, right, in longevity, and really, so it's the tribe is what's the community of people that you're around, and there's also a practical component to that of the risk of being too isolated means you don't have access to the support network that you really will want at various points, and you want to have it there before you need it. Right. So that's all this is kind of comes back to proactive planning. So, and the other element of community in terms of support is, if you want to go jump in the lake, with Scott, then you want to be around people who want to do that. Right. You don't want to be around people who are telling you, "Oh, you're crazy, don't do that." You're gonna freeze to death. Right. So, trying to quit smoking, much easier in a group of non-smokers than it is if you're going to continue to go to, I don't know, bridge club or something, and they all, everybody there smokes, and you decide you wanted to quit. So these are things around conscious choices that we make that will have huge impacts around both health, but also making life a lot easier. And that's the goal, is how do you make it easy in terms of your effort goes to the right thing. So you mentioned hormesis. We see hormesis. That's essentially the training effect, right? And you can apply it to everything. It applies to plants. A plant that sits there and never sees wind and has perfect conditions is nowhere near. You put it outside and suddenly it just falls over and dies. It can't handle the real world. We're the same. We want stress, but we want healthy stress to be able to be resilient. And I think went around the other day. I think yesterday was a woman from France, a 117-year-old nun who survived COVID. Like yesterday was her 117th birthday.
Wow.
She didn't get to 117 without a lot of things going her way. But what it really says is just how resilient you can continue to be at any age. And that's and that's the part of healthspan is, driving resilience. This sedentary, not doing anything different day to day is kind of setting yourself up for a shorter life and a shorter health span than you might otherwise be able to achieve.
Right. Well, for you said don't start to get you started talking about exercise. For me, it's don't get you started talking about diet, right? It's, 27 years in the restaurant world, watching people eat, as an observer, being 40 pounds overweight twice. I started intermittent fasting. I'm an early adopter, right? I see something, I'm like, yeah, let's do it, right? Let's go. And I started intermittent fasting 9 years ago, and people were coming up, it's like, how'd you lose the weight? What'd you do? And I was like, I tell them, it's like I undereat for 20 hours and then I overeat for 4. And like, I could never fast. I could never do that, right? I learned not to say the word fast for like 5 years, right? I intermittent fast. They're like, what is, I could never do that. But now there's literally like 21-year-old kids that intermittent fast, right? I say kids, they're adults, but I'm almost 49. I mean, there's people less than half my age that they fast and have bulletproof coffee and do keto and do those type of things. 9 years ago, I couldn't, someone who was 50 pounds overweight wouldn't even try anything that was literally working for me. Right. And so it's really how things take time. I think social media is going to speed things up though, in terms of how things happen. Right.
Yeah. There's, like everything, there's two sides to the coin. There's I think you can argue that the information is out there much quicker and more transparent than it used to be, but it's also a lot noisier environment to try to navigate. And I think that's so you see a lot of people who have just said, I'm never going to do social media because it's just too much noise. It's too much work to find the needle in a haystack, and it absolutely can feel that way. I would say there's those of us in social media who are contributors and those of us who are receivers. Right. I tend to be more of a contributor because I don't have time to I figured out a few credible sources to look to, and the rest of it is I'm not going to, we're never going to catch everything coming through anyway. So
right. It's the same way. I mean, the reason I started doing podcasting and live shows because I was a big fan of it, but you only have so much time, in addition to your job to actually listen to something. So there's, I have in rotation probably 4 or 5 different podcasts that I listen to, or different people that I listen to, and then some will fall out, and then a new one will come in, and then I spend a lot more time creating things now than I actually do consuming stuff. I've done all the consuming over the years, so Scott is really interesting. Both of us are named Scott. Both of us focus on longevity. Your website's Longevity Advantage. My true website is called Modern Longevitarian. Strongforlonger.com actually sends you to Modern Longevitarian, but it was so hard to spell. I had to find something that would stick with people's minds, right, and get them there in a different way. My traffic went up on my website when I started using the forwarding link, strongforlonger.com. But I think, Scott, what we're really, both of us are after is longevity or lifespan is the positive side effect of really trying to extend somebody's or our health span or somebody else's health span. Let's really talk about what health span is. And you talked about the curve. I don't know if this is where comes out. I don't know if you have a whiteboard behind the curtain behind you to start doing demos or what, but because the thing is that, I say strong for longer. We don't want to be weaker and linger. We want to be strong for longer, and the correlation I think to this could be is that both of our dads got sick at age 55, right? And so there could be things like that. So let's talk about health span.
Sure. So I'll use my dad as an example. Young, healthy guy in his generation. Real men smoked, and it was long before the days they invented filters on cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And and it was normal, nothing unusual. But at 55, 56, I don't remember when he had his first heart attack. I was still relatively young at the time. Mm-hmm. But in that area, you kind of, you sucked it up, but he was kind of told, you better get your affairs in order. He's running a business, so he had the stress of that. And I guess he did some of that, but he still had a second heart attack a few years later. Went on to have prostate cancer and a couple of treatments around that. And miraculously, he lived to 90, right? So he beat all the odds in terms of from a lifespan that anyone, anyone at 55 or so, when he first got diagnosed, would say the odds of you living that long are virtually zero. So he obviously made life changes and improvements along the way. But if you look at his health span, was really curtailed. So really, by the time that first diagnosis came, he was living with that every day. And so when I say living with that, to let you relate to what that feels like. So if you get a diagnosis of you have an acute cardiovascular condition, from that moment on, you are walking around with a grenade in your hand, afraid to let it go, right? And that's kind of the analogy I think is important for people to understand, because that's kind of what it feels like. It's just going to go off if you have anything at all. Somebody bumps you and you let go of it. To think about doing that for 30 years or so. So that's kind of what we talk about with health span, is that you want to remain active and remain feeling like we can feel young mentally, even though we know we've got some stuff going on, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, to literally feel like, no, I can go run a 10K. Yeah, it's not as fast as I did 10 years ago, but I know I can still do it. I know I can still pick things up. I know I can get outside and do all the things of daily living that value to me, whether it's golf or whether it's fishing. Obviously is pretty easy, but things that involve activity. So when we talk about health span, it's really keeping in control of the choices of what you want to do and not having to sacrifice. You may make different choices and you may do different activities over the course of life, because that's natural anyway. But the point is, if you want to remain in control of your life and your decisions, that comes out of maintaining health span. So the classic example when I talk to people is, if I can guarantee you that you will live to 100 years old, and on your 100th birthday, all your family and friends are going to gather, and maybe you're going to golf in the morning and you're going to have this wonderful dinner, and then you're going to go up and you're going to pass in the night in your sleep. Who wouldn't sign up for that? Right. And so obviously that's a recipe everybody feels pretty good about if they were guaranteed that, and never have disease, and everything kind of just shuts down at the same time. Life doesn't work that way for 99.99% of us. So how can we get as close to that as we can? And so that's really that measure of, in that scenario, that's your health span is 100%. Mm-hmm. Right. And so how much are you going to give away? You're going to make 90%. So, I'll live till 90, but really the last 10 or 15 years are going to be a lot of visits to doctors, a lot of cost obligation that maybe we were hoping to avoid. And that's, I always kind of say for people, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. We really need to be careful about using cost as a reason not to be proactive, because reality is most of us will not be able to afford to be sick in later years, right? The demand on the healthcare system is only just beginning to show signs of what's coming in the next 20 years. It's, things are going to have to change, because literally there is a tsunami coming, both from the cost standpoint but even the resource burden, right? We've had a social change from boomers who had lots of kids, or there were lots of kids in their families, and now it's flipped around with the declining birth rate. There are just nowhere near the number of people in terms of a support network to be able to support us if we need help. So robots will only do so much, but we may need a little more of the Jetsons than we'd planned on. So there are many things changing. In terms of, I'd say that's, I guess, the other piece of this would be, don't plan on your world or your experience of aging to look anything like your parents or your grandparents. That's really hard to get through to people. But if you do the studies around the social change, and then throw in the technology change and the decline in public health, there is no way it can look anything like your parents.
Right.
And so, not to use fear as a motivator, I think it's a terrible motivator, but it's a practical reality of design for something that's far more resilient, and you'll thank yourself.
Mm. Yeah, it's when you start thinking about it, people on our end, you and me, we have to think about retirement differently, right? Because it's not like a age 62 retirement and then, hey, I'm going to live to 74 and I got to have enough in the bank to get me to that far, right? For me, being, 48, it may be that, I don't stop working until 80 or later, right? If I've been focused on this by that point, it'll be 50 years that I've been like, focused on, like you said, just improving a little bit every day, like your dad did. He like ate a little bit better every year, did things differently, and beat the odds, and so it's super interesting when you're thinking about the economics of longevity. And you also, on the other side of that, where the public health is going, like every year, the percentage rises of people who are overweight and obese, right? It goes up every year. Like yesterday, I'm sitting there waiting to get a haircut, and I hear the numbers, right? And the only other person, human being, that was in, of the 8 people that were in that building that I could see that was not overweight was like this 5-year-old kid. Every other person, every, person working there, every other person waiting, every person getting their haircut were all overweight except me and that little 5-year-old kid, right? And I'm like, this is crazy. It is crazy that we're all this out of shape and overweight. And it's just, it doesn't add up. And I'm not judging people. I'm just saying that this is the fact, right? That as a society, we're degrading and even like de-evolving in a way, right?
Yeah, it's it is probably the single biggest public health issue we have. And again, as the response to COVID, while in one sense I think is really inspiring, it pales in comparison to the issues that we have in front of us right now with public health. There's I try to encourage people to I provide for my students a dashboard. Kind of here's all the health metrics that you can keep track of. Again, this is the engineer. As soon as you start to measure something, now becomes a reason to drive change. So, the person who gets on the scale every day is usually a simple example. I now have a drive. So next time I get on that, I hope I'm just a little less. I was a pound and a half less. Those become motivated. Oh, okay, it slipped a little bit. Okay, I'm going to get back on it today. So there's lots of things around just monitoring public health, personal health beyond simply what weight. Weight at the end of the day is just a number. Right. BMI is absolutely important. It's a great predictor of longevity. I can tell you based on what your BMI is, how many years of life that you will give away. Been lots of studies on that. We know what that is, and it's very real. And the longer you mentioned that, the longer that we carry weight. So the younger we are, the sooner we carry weight, the more years of life we're going to give away, but also the more years of health we're going to give away. And so you get this effect, this combining effect of, as soon as we get our first disease and we start to take a medication for the disease, 99% of the time, that medication is going to make weight management more challenging, not less. And so now, managing weight becomes a bigger challenge than before we had the disease. And then unfortunately, as soon as we've had the first disease, what we haven't realized is we've had others coming in behind it. Again, chronic disease we're talking about. And so now the second and third disease. So if you look at the number of people that have 2 or more chronic diseases over age 60, it is scary. And so that's why so the younger we are, the more proactive we are, the better. Wherever you are today, the things you can start to do today to reverse many of these things, which we know how to do, and that's really that's really what my show is about. I tend to have a lot of doctors on it, kind of talking about what are the things that you can do today, right? Not to come and get a procedure. What are the things you can just do today that will start to change your health and get at as the engineer, I want to know why. So that's really what I focus on, is the education piece of why, if I eat this diet or if I do this exercise, what's actually changing. And so that to me would say there's a dashboard of health metrics like blood pressure and annual blood work, but there's also things we look at aging to say, I call the 5 master regulators of aging. None of them are things you're going to measure, but if we look at them, number one would be NRF2, right?
Yep.
In terms of maintaining immune system, in terms of the master regulator of our immune system at NRF2, NAD levels, right? We know that we want to keep those up. We want to keep our nitric oxide levels up. We know how to do that through food and exercise. Glutathione levels, if you're looking to manage antioxidants that actually do something, it's glutathione that's in your system, not just the food that you eat. And then your mitochondrial levels, in terms of want to make sure we maintain muscle health, and the fuel source to do everything, organ function, not just walk up a flight of stairs, all comes from mitochondrial function. And so managing those 5, and thankfully it's the same thing that'll keep all 5 from, they're all going to decay, but what's the rate of decay that you're going to live with will be largely determined by the lifestyle. So the more you can preserve that slope and keep it shallow, the healthier everything gets, and the more you push off disease, and hopefully you never see it at any point in your life.
Right. It's those are so important. And so you being the engineer, right, on your website, you actually have a biological age calculator where people, if they get blood work done, they can punch those in and see what their biological age is, and in comparison to their chronological age, right? So let's talk about that for a second, and then I want to ask you about because I'm a diet, I'm curious about what you eat, knowing everything that you know. Let's go back let's talk about biological age calculator.
Yeah, thanks. That to me is I'm as geeky as the next guy, and so I spent a good portion of the education piece on epigenetics, and it's really probably the most exciting field of medicine today, and of medical science. And the reason being, so we thought genetics was the big thing, and so when they had the Genome Project in the late 90s, and we discovered we had about 21,000 genes. Well, that's pretty cool, but Waterflea has 30,000. We're not that special genetically. Right. But as we look at it today, we understand, so our genes are essentially the computer. You don't have it plugged in, you don't have a keyboard, you don't have any software. It's a paperweight. It's going to do nothing. So epigenetics we can think of it as the software, or like I say, there's the genes are the piano, and it's the music. What music you want to play is the epigenome, and you can either play really, really awful notes, or you can play some beautiful music on it. And so obviously we'd all rather be part of a beautiful symphony.
Right. So just let me interrupt you real quick, but just to let everybody know that may not know exactly what he's talking about, the software drives the hardware, and your 5 pillars, your mind, environment, diet, exercise, community, is the software that drives the hardware, which is epigenetics, which is the environment created to allow your genes to express themselves in that environment. Give it a bad environment or bad software, you can get bad hardware. And I just wanted to, because people may not know exactly, because I ask a lot of people, do you know what epigenetics is? And they're like, no. And so I just wanted to lay that down real quick.
Yeah, it's a so there's a couple elements I'll try to kind of walk you through here in fairly straightforward terms. So it's really, in our genes, we are all predisposed to all sorts of things, right? So I think people have heard, am I predisposed to a particular disease that maybe was inherited from a parent? So we'll use breast cancer, say, for a woman, right? So you can carry that predisposition, but we have what's called methylation. So when we're young, I describe methylation as, think of it as like a blanket. So when we methylate genes, we keep them from expressing. And so when we're young, the body's really good at knowing, okay, I want this gene turned on, so I'm going to expose that one. But all these other ones, we're just going to put them away and decide if we want them later, because we may need them to, so when we get to adolescence, for example, right, we want to switch genes on during adolescence to allow the sex organs to develop. And so again, we'll just use the woman. So it needs to develop those sex organs, and then in later life and menopause, okay, we're going to turn those genes off. So it's a physical switch that the body knows how to control to turn on and off. So when we call it methylation, it means to blanket them. So what happens in aging, the older that we get, the more confused our body gets around that the signal or the messaging starts to get mixed up. And so things that should have been covered now start to get exposed. Or you can think of like a ball of string, and it starts, when you buy it at the store, it's all nicely packed up. Very little of the surface area of the string is exposed. So, well, unwrap it and kick it around on the floor for a while, and guess what's going to happen? It's going to start to get exposed. And so if our lifestyle is like kicking the ball of string around on the floor, then we're going to start to see some consequence of that down the road. So the biological age marker is really now become the gold standard of how we measure age. So, you said, I think you're 49, did you say?
Turn 49 next month, so 48 right now.
Okay, so I'll reveal the big reveal. I'm 61, but actually my phenotype, in terms of if I can use the blood marker test. So there's, I think, 8 different elements from a standard blood test that you can put in. It's nothing special to put them in, and it will calculate what's your biological age. So how close is it to your birth age or your chronological age? So mine is 11 years younger than my chronological age. So it says I'm 50 in terms of the age of my cells based on the analysis of the correlation between the levels within my blood relative to if we were to actually do the DNA profiling on all of them. So this has become essentially all the genetics research, all of the pharmaceutical research. So if you look at T cells in your thymus coming out, right? Vision. So I posted something the other day from David Sinclair's work looking at how to restore vision. Well, so really what we're talking about is resetting the tissues to make the tissues young again. So now the methylation comes back on. We grow, we have the ability to grow new cells that we didn't before. We have the ability to make the cells literally younger. So while someone puts some cream on their face and suddenly the wrinkles go away and we're all, oh, wow, that's amazing. Imagine if you could do that one time or twice over the course of your life to say for your vision. So we get macular degeneration, which is why I'm wearing glasses. It's normal. So instead of going to get glasses at age 40, if I went and got instead of laser surgery or anything else, I just got an injection in my eye and I'm good for another 40 years. Like, that's pretty cool. So that's where a lot of this work is going. And we use the biological clock as our metric now of measuring how fast things are aging. So anyone can go in there. It's free. Just put in your blood work. So go to longevityadvantage.com. You'll see one of the tabs is calculator. And you can put in just pull out a blood test, or if you're coming up for a physical, just say, I want to make sure I'm going to get these things because I want to find out how I'm tracking. And then your own dashboard is look at it every year, right? Once a year to see, because you can have your chronological age getting older and your biological age getting younger when you start to take actually better care, because the body wants to heal itself. That's what it's driven to do. And so all you're doing by kind of in the 5 pillars and lifestyle choices is enabling what your body was designed to do from the start.
Right. It's interesting. I get asked occasionally, people, when they realize how old I am and that I don't wear readers, right? I had LASIK surgery. Those of you who know me, I know Trey Shipley from knowing each other since middle school watches the show and he gave us a thumbs up earlier. I used to wear glasses starting in the 6th grade, right? Because I couldn't see far away. So about 15 years ago, I had LASIK surgery, but I still I don't have to wear readers. I can still see everything up close and everything like that. And they asked me why, and I'm like, it's got to be that I've been intermittent fasting for the last 9 years, that my body is just through autophagy and those type of things that kind of kept everything kind of younger than what it. And so I would imagine that my biological age is probably, I don't know what it is. I never get tested. I need to, because the gold standard is something that just come up in the last year for me. And so really need to go down, down that road and see where I'm at. And I've often thought about, as I bring on coaching clients, that it would be included, like, this is your biological age now, right? After 90 days worth of coaching, what is your biological age at, right? And so we could actually show what, working with, a modern longevitarian or somebody like that could benefit your life in just a 90-day period. So I'm interested in, I mean, gosh, the 5 master regulators. I know all of those and know what those things are about, but it's, so we could talk an hour on that, and then, but it's funny that, and this is the joy of being live. We can just kind of have this conversation. People want a silver bullet. I think that when, I have 8 pillars, you have 5 pillars, they're all really kind of encompass the same things. But people want, they want a magic bullet, right? They want this one thing, and there's no one single thing that's going to lower your, biological age by 11 years versus your chronological age. There's all these things that have to be done to do that type of stuff, to be young for your age. But I'm curious. Let's just talk about your diet, right? I'm curious about knowing everything. Do you know all the data, all the science? Those things. What does your diet look like?
Well, so again, I'll preface it and I'll say I think a diet is a hugely confusing area for people, and I would say there's generally too much passion around diet, and just kind of step back a little bit and take a breath and say fuel serves a basic purpose, right? It's right. to feed the bacteria in our gut. That's all the food is for. And there's diets that will be good transitional diets, right? Do you need to lose weight? There are diets that will be better at helping you lose weight than others. Doesn't mean that there's only one for sure. And then there's diets that are really about longevity. So I get a little concerned when someone says this is the best diet. No, there is no best diet. It's what's the right diet for where you are in your life to get you from here to the next point, and then from there to the next point. And as we age, right, our caloric needs go down, and some other needs go up. So generally, I would describe myself as closest as being a flexitarian. I don't ascribe to the ethos aspects of diet. I absolutely respect them, but that to me is a philosophy around want to preserve the animals. Yeah, I'm not a hunter. I'm not interested in any of that. But at the same time, I look at regenerative ag and say, free range animals on those farms do a tremendous benefit for the foods that we eat from them. Right. I don't eat much. I don't eat beef, because beef is, I learned the hard way. I had 2 nights in a row beef a number of years ago before I got into anything, and said, my body doesn't deal with it very well. So I was listening to my body. I'll eat salmon, but largely, I'm largely a vegan type diet, or a whole food plant diet would be more appropriate. And I'll kind of throw some things in, and I throw a lot of variety. Like for me, it's like I've always, when if I went into your restaurant, what I would be interested in is what I haven't had before. Right. It turns out, variety, eating the same breakfast day in and day out, as healthy as that breakfast may be, what if I had 3 breakfasts that I rotated through the week? Generally, that's going to be better than eating the best breakfast 7 days a week. And so that's really where I am on diet. And I go to the blue zones and say, I've done the analysis on all of those. And generally what they'll say on those is relative to what we think of as diet in our world. So they have dairy as part of their diet, but they don't have zero from cattle. Right. So all the dairy that they get is from goat or sheep. So the fact that they drink dairy, and so if you understand this, the chemistry between dairy from cow is not the same as the chemistry, and think about what the cows in North America eat and what also comes with it. So different chemically and a lot more toxins. So it's no wonder that that's a source of confusion. So I'll kind of work on that one. And then same thing I would say with meat. If for people who like it as part of their diet, then eat as clean a meat as you can get your hands on, right? So if you know what the source of it is, again, if you look at saturated fat content from anything free range is going to be a fifth of what it is from what sits on the grocery store. And if you eat, an appropriate quantity relative to, I'm all about the meat thing. The more you eat, the more challenging it'll be. But again, if you track your blood work annually, you'll learn, how does my body deal with it? Because ultimately, it doesn't matter how yours deals with it relative to mine. It only matters how does your body deal with it. And as you start to measure some basic aspects on a dashboard, you will know better than anybody. Within your family, you probably have some similarities, but so that's kind of a maybe the roundabout answer on diet. But I'm not big on telling people that they should eat this or they should eat that, or that one is going to guarantee. I know all about keto as an endurance athlete. Right? I can get into ketosis on any diet. When you go out for a long run, that's how the body goes there. It uses all the carbs, and you'll be burning fat in a matter of time anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I don't push any one thing. I do say these are the pillars of I'd say about diet. And they're same as yours. You need to have plant diversity. You need to eat majority plants. When I say majority, the blue zones, there are 90% or more is their common number in plants. I call it fuel as well, right? So when I say there's 5 F's inside of that fuel pillar, fiber, and you can see kind of over my shoulder, Dr. Will B's book, Fiber Fueled, right? And he talks about the gold standard in fiber is the diversity, right? And so I look at the same things. Then there's clean food.
And lots of it, right? I shoot for like 60 grams a day of fiber. It makes up for all sorts of mistakes.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. Where I heard him talk about that 97%, even with the lower standard that we have today in our society, or our culture, the lower standard in America for fiber, 97% are deficient on fiber. So it's super, super crazy when you think about that. And that's, in a carnivore diet, there's zero fiber in that, right? There when we're doing that. And I love that David Sinclair, right? He's the researcher from Harvard. He said, if you want to grow muscle, right, you can eat a carnivore diet. So that's a diet for that type of thing, because it shows you that everything's good, right? But if you want to have a positive hormesis effect, you eat more plants, right? Because it's telling it that your body, that there's this time of that you need to protect itself because your times aren't so good. And so that's why those impacts of those things happen. So clean food, non-GMO, organic. Just get over the fact that organic, food may cost more than what the conventional food is, because for me, my mindset is that's what real food costs, right? That's the price of it. But like I said, you can go Costco. We talked about this prior to the show. Costco is the number one seller of organic food. And this big tub of spinach that cost $8 at Whole Foods will be $3.99, 50% off on the regular at Costco. And so just, you got to find the places where it all fits in. Right. And so that's why, finding the right place. And then I believe that there's times to fast, which actually can put you in ketosis, which is what you said. Right. And then, which it leads to metabolic flexibility, which I think is super important. Right. And then there's times to feast. So those are the 5 F's inside of that. I don't tell people that they should eat a low carb diet like I do. I'm gluten free. It's kind of easy for me to do that. But I am saying that you need to be metabolic flexibility, and you can do that by eating low carb from time and getting into ketosis. Going on a long run for someone like you could do it. And even because if you're having 60 grams of fiber, you're probably 150, 100, maybe 200 grams of carbs a day, right? If you're actually looking at the true macro, and you're subtracting all that fiber that's coming out. I mean, so your net would be probably around 100, 125 probably, carbs a day, right? Where my net's probably, my net carbs are 25 to 55, maybe on a feast day, I may go up to 75, right? So it's really an interesting, piece of the puzzle when it comes to all of that stuff.
Yeah, I get a lot of mine from ground flaxseed, hemp, kind of generally a lot of from seeds. That's right. The easy way to get it. So yeah.
Yeah, seeds, nuts, and then also, like for me, avocado, right? One avocado has 10, right? And so it's 10 grams of fiber. Gross carbs 13, to subtract the fiber out, the 10, it has 3 net carbs in it, and really good healthy fats and those type of things. Because when you're eating a lot of plants, right? That's the struggle being low carb and eating plants, is finding that balance between when am I going to kick out of ketosis, right? And eat, because if you eat too much to get the calories, right, then you could go out of ketosis. But I fast long enough where I get back into ketosis almost every day. So it's super interesting. And when I started intermittent fasting 9 years ago and doing 20-hour underfeeding phases or fasting, I didn't change my diet. I was still a high carb, fat vegetarian, but I was able to lose 30 of the 40 pounds because I was making my body click over to ketosis, right? And I gave my body long enough for the insulin response from high glycemic foods to get down to where it flipped the switch over. Talking about flipping switches over, it's from storing fat to burning fat, and then I had like a 6-hour window, 7-hour window that I was actually burning fat before I actually was in ketosis. Before I ate again, right? And so it was, and that's how the science behind all that stuff works. So,
yeah, it's I think the main thing for people with diet and particularly weight loss is think long term, right? Which there's lots of reasons why people yo-yo diet. So, kind of back to maybe you asked the question, what's the silver bullet? So, what I tell people, the silver bullet is where I started. It's in the mind, right? You need to unless you're ready to make a long-term commitment to your health, a goal of losing weight is, to me, not a goal worth starting. Right? It's got to be much bigger than that. It's one of the elements that will help you get to better health. And it's absolutely important, not to discourage anyone, but maybe you need to spend some time kind of contemplating getting your mind in a place and getting your tribe kind of set up to be able to support it, so that when you say, okay, on this date or my birthday, whatever it is, I'm gonna start down this path and I'm not going back.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me when I first went keto. I told a friend of mine that I went keto. He goes, yeah, but when you come off, you'll just blow back up again. That was 5 years ago, right? So I haven't come out. I mean, I cycle, but I haven't gone back to eating the way that I did before. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that doing the Wim Hof method made me crave fat. So by being cold, my body craves fat. And then I was smart enough to know that if I eat fat that I'm craving and keep the high carb, the high sugary salad dressings, where it's all perceived to be healthy, where I'm eating a salad with balsamic vinaigrette that has sugar added to it, or even some, I've worked for some restaurant companies that add sugar to their blue cheese dressing to cover up the pungentness of the blue cheese, right? So people will get a sweetness in that. When I worked in Salt Lake at a hospital, we'd make, buffalo sauce from scratch. And we sold more when I put honey in it to sweeten it than I did when I actually didn't. And I have a very, my palate's changed being keto this long. Right? There's things that just are so sweet to me, but I eat things that are more sour than most, carb burners or people who aren't metabolically flexible. I eat, things are sour and things like that. And because it just changes over time, with that. But but I agree with you. Mindset is the silver bullet. And really getting your mind right is the important piece of the puzzle, because I think there's a reason why the tortoise is the symbol for longevity, because slow and steady wins this race, not the hare, right? So at
Yeah.
age 35, I lost 40 pounds by doing P90X, and then I gained it back, and then at 40 I had to lose it again and learn how to maintain it, and I've maintained it for the 9 years since then.
Yeah, I think a common trait I've seen within endurance athletes. We're trained to think much longer around the bigger event in terms of in the planning and preparation, and we tend to keep close tabs on kind of how our health is and kind of that dashboard thing. So as you do that, you realize this is not work. This
Right.
is when you think you're going with the flow by following the crowd until you realize, right? And no, I'm actually floating downstream. This is easy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You start to realize, no, it's them that's fighting the current every day because someone's yelling at them, swim upstream, swim upstream. It's another word for upstream, but that's essentially what life looks like for them. So
Right, because they're just going against everything that's natural in our lives, right? Everything that's natural in our lives. It's just pretty. And it's just has to do with a lot of brainwashing and stuff like that. I mean, like we've been told breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right? And then you also and so I was eating breakfast, right? And so what was I eating for breakfast? If I was in a hurry, it was Raisin Bran, with milk, which which was conventional milk. It wasn't even organic milk back then. So high sugar, right? Sugar on the raisins, and the raisins are already dried and super sweet already. There's more nutrition in the cardboard box that the Raisin Bran came in than it actually is in the bran, right? And then, drinking the milk that has all the toxins and all those things in there. Or I mean, when I was in, early 20s, I was eating a honey bun and drinking a Gatorade for breakfast, right? Supposed to have orange juice. So I have orange flavored Gatorade because I need to, do that stuff. And it was just so bad. But when I started, read a book on intermittent fasting, it said skip breakfast, and it gave me permission to skip the time of day, a meal, and the time of day that I was never hungry anyway, that I was forced to eat through marketing and, my parents telling me that was the most important meal of the day. I agree that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but I'm going to have mine at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing about breakfast says it happens at 7 a.m.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, right? All of that, when you eat, should be based off your sleep type, your sleep pattern, and when you're actually hungry. I don't know. You mentioned breakfast and having 3 or 4 different breakfasts. So I imagine, Scott, that you eat breakfast, right? And
It'll depend, right? So my goal is I try to at least twice a week. I'll skip breakfast or I'll have breakfast at lunchtime or so. I don't deal with extended fasting as well as you do. And I say that's the thing you kind of step outside your whatever your normal patterns are and discover, right? That's only how you learn. It's not by, our goal here today is to give people ideas of different things to try, not to say that, you need to do, what Scott 1 or Scott 2 says. It's around experiment and just get in touch with your body. Your body will tell you what it needs. And as long as you keep feeding it sugar and those bad fats, it's going to keep telling you, keep feeding me those things because that's what it's been wired to do. But it will, if you get going down the right direction, I can talk about food sensitivities and things like sugar and sodium to me are like I can't imagine they taste awful. Like if the things, that I might have loved before, it's like, it just is. It's not right or wrong. It just realized, no, the body really does change but it takes time to get there. So
it does. For sure.
It's I enjoy fasting. It's good to do. Like again, if I had to get blood work done recently, so so I don't have to get blood work done at the first appointment and wait a week to get the first appointment of the day. I can get one at 11 o'clock and and fasting for it, and that's fine. Use whatever excuse you want, but the main thing is don't reward yourself with crappy food because you fasted, right? Reward yourself with quality at every opportunity.
Well, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right? So make it a nutrient dense, meal. And that, starts with plants and healthy fats and if you choose whatever protein you choose to have in there. I try to work out fasted, so I'm going to work out right after we get off the show, and then I'll have time to get to where my 2 o'clock in the afternoon, eating time, there.
Good. Yeah. And I did an hour on the bike this morning before the show. So,
Yeah.
right. So you just work it into your day. Say, this is plan it out.
Yep.
Don't leave it till the end of the day.
Right.
Because otherwise it's too easy to drop off.
Right.
So good.
Well, yeah, it's like yesterday I was getting hungry, and it was like 1 o'clock, and because I didn't sleep that much the night before. And I know that if I don't sleep, I'm going to be hungry earlier and things like that. So, knowing how sleep impacts all these things. And I forced myself to work out. It was a 35-minute workout. It was upper body. I did, some push-ups, some pull-ups, and this new move that I found. I think it came from CrossFit called Man Maker, right? If you guys are interested in that, just
that sounds like a CrossFit.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Right. Basically it's like a weighted burpee in a way, right? It's like, and I did it with 30 pounds with renegade rows, which I don't know if you know what that is, where you're in a plank position and you have to pull the weight up in one-handed, right?
Okay.
And so, and so you're doing push-ups, you're doing renegade rows, you're getting onto your feet, you're doing kind of a squat, then you're taking the weight above your head, right? Ow, that hurts, right? But it's 35 minutes. And then I had a sensible meal after that, right? I had some leftover cauliflower rice from the cooking show the day before. I put some macadamia nut milk in there, some nutritional yeast, some smoked paprika, right? Some tofu. I put like 3 cups of spinach and cooked that down. We had some leftover shredded cabbage. I put that in there, and that was, crisp tender in there. And I do like salt, and put some real salt in there. And I'd be honest with you, I think that was one of the best things. I don't know if it's because I was so hungry and I worked out or whatever, but I was like, told my daughter, I was like, this is one of the best things I've made in a long time. And macadamia nut milk is a new find for me. I just found it in Costco looking for almond milk, and I saw that, and I was like, well, let me buy this and see how this is. And we love it. And it's raw. I don't like the fact that it's got, a couple, preservatives put in it, and they add vitamin D and stuff like that. I don't think we need those things, but our society thinks that we need vitamin D in milk, right? So that's kind of a thing that goes in there. But no, it was amazing, yesterday.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's, that's good. It just, if you're experimenting in that world, it's pretty hard to go too far wrong.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're right. Right. And like, for instance, and this is the longest show I've had yet. So we'll just wrap up. we could literally, you and I could talk forever on all this stuff. But I will say this, right, that like I started out 9 years ago because I read a book doing 20-hour fasting. Right. Then I read, Brad Pilon's, Eat, Stop, Eat, where you do a 24-hour fast twice a week. Right. So then I pushed, a couple of the 24 hours. Then I was reading, 2 years ago, I was reading, The Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung. And he talked about healing people with type 2 diabetes with extended water fast. So then I did a 21-day fast with these 3, micro water fast in there that I went up to 86 hours water fasted. Working in a restaurant, that's not easy to do. Right.
Yeah.
To do that, because you're smelling food all the time. Food smells better, those type of things. And so I did that. Right. But then my normal on the regular fast, I found out that like 16 hours is too short for me. Right. 20 hours, I tend to, which is my old go-to, I tend to kind of overeat a little bit. Right. When I get there. So I've kind of settled on this like 18-hour play, 16 to 18. And then if I'm busy or if I'm not hungry, I'll go longer. But my normal thing that I try to do is around 18. And you hardly hear anybody, unless it's on the Zero app, you can have an option for that to do it. And there was no apps for tracking fasting. You had to actually like look at the clock, right? When I was starting this 9 years ago, there was no apps and none of that type of stuff. But now, so my sweet spot is like 17, 18-hour fasts, right? And it's just, that's what works for me. Somebody else might go, oh my gosh, I can't, how does Scott do it? Right. Or I can't do that. I would never be able to do that. Or some people like, I can go 24 hours and just eat one meal a day, but that's fine, right? Because that works for you. And this is what works for me. And I think that's what both of our have the same message, is that you need to be your own health advocate and know more about your own, where you are with your diet right now, where you are with your exercise right now, your mindset, all those type of things, and just move the needle on all those pillars, a little bit each day.
That's right. Yeah. As long as once you start to own it,
Mm-hmm.
right, that's ultimately, and you'll become a motivator for others. Like you're going to have to be a leader today. It's still,
Right.
it's getting easier to follow, and, there's more people around to follow, but yeah, don't be afraid to lead in areas of health. If there's a place you ever wanted to lead in your life, I can't think of a better place other than personal health.
Mm. Well, let's wrap this up, Scott. Where can people find you online?
So you can find me all over the place. Well, not everywhere. I'm really not that busy online, but you can find me on LinkedIn, Scott Fulton on LinkedIn. We've got a YouTube channel, Longevity Advantage YouTube channel. They'll typically have an hour or so. Kind of, we get in deep with some of the things. So if you really want to understand what's going on with some things, that's really a chance to do that. And then we've got the website, obviously, longevityadvantage.com. And well, eventually I'm going to get the courses up there. So if you want to just sign up and get on the newsletter, which, right now come out quarterly, we'll try to get them monthly. Nobody's getting inundated. I have not had any complaints about anybody getting too much email. So it's a pretty safe place to go. But it's been great to be on with you again, Scott, to talk today. It's just, I think it's, we need more of you out there to doing this, and I think it's happening, and it's good, and it's an exciting time. I think, there's lots to worry about, but I'd also flip around and say there's lots to get excited about now too, because it's never been easier to start to take control of health.
Exactly. And I want to say thanks for coming on the show. It's been super amazing, and I have. 83 episodes. I've had over 50 guests. I've yet to have a repeat. This is the longest official live that I've gone. And so I would invite you to come back, and we can continue the conversation some point in the future.
Great. Yeah. Someplace you want to dive in a little deeper, we can, we've only barely got our toes in the water on a number of topics, which is what we kind of expected would happen.
Right.
So,
and I've had multiple comments about the show saying basically the purpose of my show is really to spur thought, really. Right. And to help people kind of find their own way. And can I give you 7 steps to having, great sleep in my book, called, Outstanding Landing, and you can go download that for free. And I can give you 7 steps to develop this evening routine and have better sleep. Yeah. But for the most part is that I can't tell, Jane or John Doe exactly what they need or what the right prescription for their diet or exercise or those things are, because they may not be in the same place I am in exercise. Right. I swing, 71-pound kettlebell, right? They may never swing a kettlebell in their entire life. Like I saw a post this morning. It was a 10,000 swing kettlebell challenge over 20 days, 500 swings a day. I'm considering that. Right.
Yeah.
Doing it. I'm like, that sounds like fun to me. Other people be like, oh my God, I would never do it. But on the other side, it's like, I'm not going to do an hour on a bike. I'm not the cardio kind of guy. Right. And so we find what works. Right. I love swinging kettlebells. I love doing body weight exercises and that type of stuff, and that kind of throws my BMI out of whack a little bit. So I work on waist to hip ratio is what I try to look at.
I got that as the backup. You got it. BMI is not perfect. It just is the most common. So.
Right. Exactly. And so when you have what we're saying, basically, if you have more muscle, it throws your BMI, basically it's your weight to height ratio. It really gives you a scale and does a little division there. And if you got a little extra muscle, right, even though could be low fat and more muscle, it's going to throw your BMI off. So I look at the waist to hip ratio, which is an indicator for, longevity as well. And so that's what we don't even own a scale. Right. We don't own one because there's no, it doesn't even matter in our world of body fat percentage, how we feel, how our clothes fit, how we look without our clothes on, right? Waist to hip ratio, or how we really kind of pay attention to it here in our house. Right.
Yeah. So for people, if waist to height ratio, if it's about 0.5, that's about where you want to be.
Right.
So that's an easy thing to do. If you have a tape measure and somebody to help you measure your height or figure that out on your own, you can do it. So it's easy.
Exactly. Well, thanks again, Scott. We're going to wrap it up right here.
Very good, sir. Thank you so much, and great to have you on, and great to meet your listeners.
Yes, well, thank you. And we did have some comments come in. We didn't have any questions, but I think it's because you and I were just kind of riffing and they were just enjoying the conversation. So
cool.
We'll take from there. Well, again, Scott Stanfield, Modern Longevitarian. The show it was started out as a working title called It's My Friday. And so if today is your Friday, I hope you have a great weekend. And it's time to roll the credits. Thanks for watching. Cheers.